Welcome to the Get Emergent podcast. The Get Emergent podcast guides leaders to creatively strengthen relationships and improve performance of their leadership and those that they lead. We like to provide concepts and ideas that you can turn into pragmatic experiments to help you develop your higher potential in your work and leadership, and hopefully you'll find some better practices to apply directly in your work. I'm Bill Berthel.
And I'm Jeremiah Polson.
Jeremiah, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. On this episode, we want to talk about a book I think we both value. It's been a long time since I've read it. The title is The Outward Mindset.
Yeah.
Not just a book discussion, really, there's some beautiful applications for leaders to consider from this outward mindset perspective.
Oh, yeah. Leaders in every phase. We define leadership as influence. So it's not even about the workspace. It is that, but it's much more than that as well. It's not if you're influencing, it's who and how you're influencing them. And the outward mindset gives us a real good kick in the pants, if you will, of what it means to live in a way that is helpful in all of those categories, I think, all the different ones that you find yourself in.
I love that. And I think not to dilute it, but just to speak to the richness of what we get to do is so much of our work is holistic. I know that's in our mission, but I think you and I really value that we can apply many of these ideas, concepts, and practices in almost any aspect of our life. It's not just leadership from an organizational leadership perspective, but parenting, being a better neighbor, being a really cool brother, whatever it is, right? We can really apply this in most places in our lives.
Yeah. And there's also that element of the expected place and then the unexpected place too. I was talking to a leader recently who went through a reorg recently and changed the dynamic of their responsibilities. And the principles of leadership that we discuss, both here on the podcast and through all the different ways we do, don't cease to be valuable because your responsibilities change in a season and it's all flowing and flexing. So we stay in that place of holistic flexibility and take the principles we learn and apply them as needed throughout the journey.
So the title outward mindset almost implies that there must be probably an inward mindset as well, right? So the title just grabbed me. I remember when it came out. And this is from the Arbinger Institute, which this is so totally an aside. We don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but it's interesting to think about books that are written by an organization or an institute different than a single author, right? So we see that with many leadership books. I think this genre perhaps holds more of those kinds of publications than others. But the outward mindset, what's either a key takeaway, or I think you more recently read this book and told me that you really appreciated it. What was that about for you? What the appreciation?
Yeah, I like what you said about the idea of a group putting together a resource. One of the things I like about that is typically I've found that when a research house puts together a book like this, it's well founded with research and study, right? It's reliable in a way, not to say that individual authors can't be, but there's a certain texture to it that brings that. And you find that in the Outward Mindset book, some really great stories to help the principles to become accessible, but also really rooted in some fundamental research. So the thing that really stood out to me about the Outward Mindset book is this idea that our behavior, and I know for some of us, this might be like, yeah, no, duh, Jeremiah, Bill, of course, but our behavior can either be focused on our own protection, our own advancement, or on the protection and advancement of others. And like you said earlier, it's this juxtaposition between inner and outward. The inner mindset is protecting myself, treating other people like tools or ways to get protection and advancement for me, in a sense, treating people like objects. In the Outward Mindset book, I would boil it down to the challenge of viewing other people's needs, objectives, and challenges as your intentional behavior motivation. So it's not just, and there's a trap here to become outwardly nice, which is to treat other people as humans, but not necessarily to consider their needs, objectives, and challenges. And the book does a good job of articulating the difference between those two things. And side note here, the Arbinger Institute also put out a book a few years back called Leadership and Self-Deception, which I think is a great pairing to this resource as well. Both good books. The Outward Mindset, though, drives us to some action in a way that's different and unique from the Leadership and Self-Deception tool.
So not just a book on politeness. It could look like that, right? this shift from a more inward focus to an outward focus isn't just about being polite or nice or feel good. There's pragmatic, purposeful reasons for this.
Hmm.
But I want to go back to when you were describing the inward mindset. It almost, I don't know if this is the right word, but it was almost coming up as, well, that sounds a little divisive. It sounds like, I see others as tools, or I see mechanisms to get what I want, the inward mindset.
Yeah, it can turn into fatalism, it can turn into isolationism, but at the same time, I think it feels like you're doing the right thing. It feels
Right.
like you're protecting what you ought to protect. You're taking responsibility, and it might turn out to be some sort of extreme independence where you're saying, "Oh, it's my four and no more" kind of idea. I just got to protect and advance my own gains. And there is a separation in that. It keeps us from real meaningful connection with those outside of our house, or in thinking house me personally. Outside of me, everybody becomes a way for me to move forward rather than an opportunity for connection. And I
Mm,
got a perfect example of this recently. My son's going off to college in a couple of weeks, which, I've got all kinds of emotions about.
sure, of course.
And we went to a friend's house to smoke some bacon. Great time, and we do this every so often. There's nothing like homemade bacon, by the way.
That sounds awesome.
Sorry, all my vegan and vegetarian friends out there. So we went over, and while we're at his house, he and his wife start having a conversation with my son and just asking, "Hey, how are you feeling about college?"
Mm,
And they were asking him, "What do you have for your apartment?" And
mm,
he's like, "I've got some stuff. We're going to send him with a few things." But they intentionally start asking him, "Well, do you have a frying pan? Do you have a 2-quart saucepan? Do
yeah,
you have this?"
yeah.
Now, this guy's a great chef, he's a
Cool.
foodie expert. And they didn't just ask what the needs were and connect with him at that level. The wife actually started going to the cupboards and grabbing things out of their storage and putting it on the table and placing it in a bag and saying, "Hey, take this with you. Take this with you. You don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about this now, at least. You've got this with you." And it was not just the outward focus, but it was also the behavior of working to meet a need that they saw
Yeah.
in a way that they had nothing to gain from.
Yeah. So the acronym in the book of SAM comes up for me,
Hmm.
with the SAM standing for seeing others, right? So in your story,
Yeah.
beautiful example of your friends seeing your son, right?
Yep.
It's not just I physically see a person there, but they're seeing this young man at a transitional time in his life, right? They're seeing him. There's a difference, right? It's a capital S. They actually adjust their efforts. You guys were doing something. You were smoking bacon. You could be talking about something else, right? But they make time and adjust what they're doing, that those behaviors. And then they're looking for a measurable impact, right? They're trying to make an impact with your son, right? It sounds like they're getting a bag out, and it's not just generosity. I mean, you could easily say, "Oh, you have such generous friends. That's really nice." It's actually deeper than that. They're making an impact. He's going to take these cooking essentials to his new apartment, and there's an impact for this kid going off to his apartment. That's awesome.
For sure. For sure. And it's working to advance the opportunities of the other.
Yeah.
And so that impact is so important. And there's lots of reasons we can get in our own way on this. It does take some internal work to get there. It takes external work, behavior externally. But when it's flowing, and not just for, we've used a great example of how you can see it in a personal life. But when you start to amplify that by using it in your team approach, in your planning approach, in the process of, okay, how does my team think of the needs, objectives, and challenges of the other team across the plant, across the manufacturing domains? What are the needs, objectives, and challenges of the other department leaders that I can start thinking about and take action for their advancement? What does that look like? It's such a great place.
You said it earlier, it's getting out of just that independence, and it has an eye towards and behaviors aimed towards interdependence,
Hmm.
right? So it's not just me individually independent. We can take that out into, those other areas of whether we work in an organization or with our family, wherever we are, it ripples out past us and past our immediate circle as well. We can have that kind of bigger impact with our efforts there.
Yeah.
But I gotta ask you, isn't that still like I don't know. I get something from that. I get
Mm,
enjoyment. I get, right? I get
yeah.
fulfillment. Isn't that still inwardly focused somehow? Like I'm not doing it purely out of pure generosity or altruism. Like I want to be seen as one of those guys. I do.
Yeah. Yeah. The book kicks off with this quote. I want to read it to you. It's from
Cool.
G.K. Chesterton. And he says, "How much larger your life would be if yourself could become smaller." And I think the reason this sticks around for so many years after he said it or wrote it is because there's this benefit to interdependence that's innate and automatic when you
Mm,
begin looking outward, but not just looking outward, seeing the needs around you and taking action to make an impact for their good. It
hmm.
actually pays off dividends for everybody involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's when we get that equation reversed that we start actually separating ourselves from others and we start going, okay, I want to meet my needs first, protect myself first, and sometimes only.
Yeah.
That then we might think we're actually making our world a better place, but we're shrinking it quite rapidly because we're not getting the mutual benefit of everybody coming up together.
Yeah, shameless plug for our Lead Forward retreat. We do a deep dive into those protecting mechanisms so we can understand those about ourselves as humans and as leaders, how we protect in three categories of protecting relationships, protecting self, and then protecting things, processes. And different behaviors come up in there. But I think you're right. That keeps us from an outward mindset, doesn't it? All that protection oriented effort and energy.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing is, once you experiment with it and you start letting go of the protective behaviors and mindsets, you realize, whoa, I'm flourishing much more now
Yeah.
than I ever would have before in that closed off framework. I'm curious though. I love that you posed the question of, this tension that we face and the payoff that we get. But what is it? And I'm not an expert on this, by the way. I just read the book and now we're talking about it, right? I'm doing the work. I can
When did the book
kind
come
of,
out? Like that's when I read it. So
yeah,
so if we're confessing right
great
now,
question. But what do you think, even as you talk about lead forward,
16, just looked it up.
in some of, what was it, 2016?
2016, yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So that wasn't that long ago, right?
I can't remember what I had for lunch, but yeah, keep going.
So what is it that you've seen? Or maybe if you want to go to this level, what is it that keeps you from moving to that outward mindset?
It's a great question. Um, Maybe I'll land on personal. I'll start with what I understand academically. The reason I chose the field of psychology to study was because I fell in love with this statement. And it might be quoting somebody else. I heard it from community college professor. It was like Psych 101. Might have been sociology. Those two blended back too far back. They blend in my mind. But the professor said something to the extent of if you're interested in understanding how we are free agents with motives that behave, like this field might be interesting for you. And that turned something on for me. Like he used the term free agents,
Hmm.
which freedom is a pretty big value for me, especially around creativity, and that we are like motivated and behaving with each other. Like that's in a nutshell, that's most of psychology, right? You can start getting into categories of pathology and specifics, but that's kind of psychology. This like how do we behave and think as selves, and then how do we work with others, think with others, right? Relate. Love
Yeah.
that space. That's like at its foundational level. Staying at that foundation, I'm a big BF Skinner fan from Motivational Behavior. He's kind of the stick and carrot guy, kind of the original, you're
Okay.
either attracted to something or you're repelled or avoiding something.
Hmm.
I put it in the terms of love and fear. I think the reason we don't
Mm.
go to outward mindset is fear. I think
Mm.
the outward mindset is love. And I not
Okay.
oversimplify it or make it sound too mushy or corny, but I don't think you can get much more fundamental than that. So we're fearful. You said it. Protection.
Hmm.
We tend to protect out of fear. Now, I've heard many people argue against that. No, I love the things I protect. Of course you do.
Right.
I
I'm a
protect my
fighter and a
family. I
lover.
protect my
Yeah.
country. Yes, 100%. That's not what I'm talking about, right? True protectionism. Don't go in here. You can't know me. I'm just going to give in because I fear I'll harm the relationship if I don't, if I have my own voice. I'm going to be a perfectionist. because I fear a mistake or failure. That's all fear-based protectionism.
Mm.
That's all inward. But when we counterintuitively take the risk to love, it's all outward. So fear is primal and automatic, I think, unfortunately. Love takes effort.
It has a place.
100%.
Yeah.
Whether you believe in intelligent design and creation or something more like evolution, we need it to move forward. We need it to survive on this physical world. We need fear to stay safe. I think we over rely on fear. And I don't think leaders get to fear too much. I think leadership is a fairly fearless job. I think it's a love filled job. I hope that doesn't sound too corny for our listeners.
Yeah. So would you say that when leaders are going to the inward mindset, they're functioning out of a fear base?
I think in less than 3 steps, we can get to the fear you're actually behaving out of.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you're grabbing hold, you're limiting the free agency of others
Yeah.
because you want to
Yep.
direct and dominate out of fear, fear of something.
And we might mask it in love. We might say, I love my team and I'm protecting them. But we're actually holding them back and protecting them in a way. Right? Context matters. We're talking very philosophically here right now. I recognize that. But yes, it's rooted in fear. And the antidote's in some type of outward facing, not just mindset, but then behavior, some experimentation of new behavior that's outward mindset based.
Yeah.
And those I go to, that's love, or it's being incredibly creative.
Yeah. So one of the questions a leader could ask themselves about their current practice of influence is, what am I afraid of?
100%.
Right. And don't hit the easy button there. Take the time to really dig in and go, if I'm functioning in a way that treats other people as objects, what am I afraid of that's causing me to do that? Am I afraid of losing approval, recognition, whatever it might be, and then address that first?
There's a principle in continuous improvement processes in manufacturing called 5 whys. You ask why you're doing that step in a process 5 times. And it's not a petulant why. The intention is to get a little bit deeper under the why with each questioning. We're really saying, what is the value? The 5 whys is, what's the value of this step? So you could apply the 5 fear steps. What am I afraid of? Something will come up.
Yeah.
I would dare say you get there in 3 steps if you're able to do that kind of deep work, that deep reflection, and be raw and vulnerable with yourself. You'll get to something very meaningful in 3 steps.
Yeah, that's interesting as I'm thinking about it in terms of identifying what if. So here's the potential future reality is I begin functioning in a way that helps advance other people, meets their needs, and in some sort of meaningful way helps them overcome their obstacles. Why might I be afraid of doing that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like what that's the journal prompt for you folks is what might I fear in behaving in a way that helps others without concerning myself for my own protection or advancement?
Yeah.
How do I help them and what might I fear if I did that?
So I told you I'd land on the personal. I'm not about this at all. It's fear. It's fear that's stopping me. In most contexts, I know that it's fear that I'll learn that I am like something out there I don't like. That there's some part of that thing that's either different or I'm judging in a negative way, that I'm actually, I have that value too. I have that trait. Some part of me does. And by going outward to learn more about that, to experiment with that, I'm probably going to learn something I don't cherish about myself. And that's scary. It's a little, so it's almost worth sometimes me to avoid those things or not go outward. Intuitively, I'll grow from that, right? I got to remind myself I'll get to grow there. I'll really get to understand myself and others better. And if I really, if I want that, that's the work to do. But it's fear. And for me, it's fear of thinking, oh, no, I'm a little bit like that thing I'm judging negatively about that other person or that group of people or that type of behavior. Maybe it's not really about the person. It's just the way that person does that thing that I'm negatively, protecting myself from learning more about me.
Yeah, there's an extending of yourself in the outwardness
I think
that
there is.
can generate more vulnerability than what you might be comfortable with, right? And so
is.
in the extension, I hear you saying, I'm afraid of what I might find out about myself. as I extend to be outward, as I help others, as whatever context you find yourself in. Yeah, I think for me personally, it's really, I'm just lazy.
You're not lazy.
I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to be in pain. I don't want to take time away from my normal routine to look at somebody else and really figure out what their needs are.
I think you're conserving your energy for something else that's coming along.
Oh, that's kind. That's kind.
You're not a lazy guy, but I hear you. You're protecting that effort. You're protecting that energy.
Right. To put it in the terms of fear, it would be, I'm afraid of being uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yes.
And it gets uncomfortable when you embrace a new mindset, any new mindset. There's going to be discomfort in that space. But as we all know, like you said, growth comes in the discomfort zone.
It does. And there's a willingness to step out a little bit and try something a little different, right? It doesn't have to be, I might be aware that there's this certain thing, this certain specific thing that I'm really not ready for. That's okay. How can I exercise towards that? Right. I've got a quick story. It was a very, very early. It was actually the first time I met what would later become a coaching client, met him in a training session. It was an emotional social intelligence training session. And it was first break. And he quickly came up and he said, "Hey, I think you're going to be coaching me. I just wanted to introduce myself. And I want to quickly ask, I just need a quick hack in being able to get myself a little bit more comfortable getting myself out of regular routines. I'm very routine based." He was like, he couldn't underscore it enough. I'm very, very routine based to do the same exact thing every time. I said, "Well, can you tell me something?" I said, "Do you drive to work?" And he said, "Yeah, every day." This was pre-COVID. Every day I drive into the office. I said, "Awesome." I said, "I'm going to ask, do you normally take the same route?" He's like, "Oh, 100%. Absolutely." I said, "I just need you to take a different route home today." He looked me in the eye. He said, "I don't think I like you." And he was joking, but he was also right. That was a big enough ask, right? Just to exercise a little different, right? A little different. That felt
a different path
to him. Just a different path, right? Easy for us to say just a different path. Not so easy for him to say just a different path. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would make the suggestion as we're thinking about this in application. I think they talk about this in the book is start with your closest relationships. Start with the people that are easy for you to love or that maybe you want to love more than you already do in our language that we're using. And I don't think they put it in love and fear talk in the book, but start with that one-on-one relationship where you're most likely to want to see the needs, challenges, and objectives of the other person and do something about it. And let that be the different path home today.
Jeremiah, love that idea. Folks, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode and that you're looking forward to more. You can listen to a new podcast 2 times every month here at Get Emergent or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you pick something up you're going to apply in your leadership and your work, let us know how it goes by reaching out to support at Get Emergent or directly to me, Bill at getemergent.com or Jeremiah at emergent.com.